This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're checking us out. SoFlo Radio, We Act Radio, or maybe checking out the podcast, which, by the way, you can subscribe to for free over at TalkingLeft.com, as well as follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And
we will be back on Radio or Not once we get all of our video streaming, because we have to simultaneously stream. We've got to get this figured out.
Yes, but you should be listening to Radio or Not anyway.
And it involves purchasing a piece of software.
Yes.
It's essentially what we need to do, and we will. We will.
And you can check us out and join the chat over at Talking Left as well. It's lots of fun. People log in there during the show. Another piece of software we have to purchase, by the way.
Yeah.
So this week was seriously an emotional roller coaster in the Supreme Court. You know, many of us were so frustrated by the court's decision in the Voting Rights Act case, and it was just astonishing that they could just decide that racial discrimination in this country was suddenly over. And then in the very same week, they could stand up for equality when it came to our LGBT brothers and sisters.
Can I say something also?
Yes.
I want to make a clarification on what I said last segment about okay. I used the word okay when it came to situations in which someone was married in New York, moves to Alabama, and there are going to be different laws. What I mean okay is that the IRS is going to put out, guidelines. And the okay is, once they do that, okay, now this is the next battle. For example, if the IRS says you can file jointly based on where you're domiciled. So if you were married in New York and you live in Mississippi, you can't file jointly. You say, okay, now we know we have to fight that.
Right.
But the IRS could come out and say, so long as you're married in a state that recognizes same sex, it doesn't matter where you in. You say, okay, now that's not a battle. Now we have to work on Alabama, for example. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's more that there is momentum here, and I think that these things that are in the way, these obstacles, these hurdles, I think we will clear with increased rapidity.
I think so too, and I think in keeping with that point,
yep.
I think that once these outlines are determined of how those rules apply, of what happens if you're living on a military base in Alabama. Well, the military has recognized your right to those benefits, but as soon as you step foot off that base, you're technically not married in that state.
And I think when I say that's okay, because it clarifies the inequality that's going to seem so ridiculous to everyone. They're going to say, we need to stop this.
Well, I think it creates a clear fight to be had, where it's much easier to say, in this state and under this law, this would be my taxable, income, or this would be the benefits that I get. And in this state, I don't get them simply because I'm a gay American. I think that creates a very clear case that is easier to argue before the court than whether or not it's okay for people to marry the person that they love.
Such a gigantic decision.
Right. I think we passed the big hurdle. These other hurdles are small compared to...
Right, and it clarifies, like you said, the debate.
Right.
And it's very easy to argue for equality.
Right.
Now, at this point where it finally has been recognized by the federal government, they finally have said, yeah.
It's easier to say this is the exact inequality that it's caused.
Right, and we can point to it directly, and now it's up to you, court, or it's up to you, legislature, it's up to we to stand in the streets and demand it, and then end it.
Right, and we'll get there. We also wanted to talk about Justice Scalia specifically. Because, we're big fans and everything.
He definitely gives us fodder for a 3-hour show.
Yeah, we could do a 3-hour show just on Scalia's hypocrisy.
And you know what? He'd love it, too.
Right. So essentially in the Voting Rights Act case, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, Congress, your ruling doesn't mean much.
Well, he joined Roberts in saying that.
Right. But we're deciding that there's no more racial discrimination, and the Voting Rights Act, the formula that calculates which states need to be subject to the preclearance requirement, that formula is null and void. So down with the Voting Rights Act.
And side notes, he actually signed a concurring opinion. He wrote it himself, I'm sorry, which indicated that if we should have struck it down, Section 5 as well. And Thomas actually wrote one saying I would have struck down Section 5 as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, leave it to Thomas to want to pull the ladder up behind him.
right. So
But then when it came to United States v. Windsor, the DOMA case, his dissent, his bench statement, all of it was just astonishing. Now, the bench statement is something that most people don't get to hear, and they don't typically release it publicly. So you would have to go through his written opinion and try and pull out the pieces that he puts together. But essentially, according to Justice Antonin Scalia in his bench statement on DOMA, the Supreme Court has no primary role in determining the Constitution's meaning.
right, which is true.
I know, but you would have thought maybe he would have gotten to this opinion like before striking down the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, he was a day late.
Yeah. A day late, actually a few months late when we think back to all the other
Sure.
horrible decisions.
Actually, a career late.
Yes. This is just astonishing. This is from his bench statement. The power of the court, meaning the Supreme Court, is increased enormously and becomes primary among the three branches when our ability to expound upon the Constitution is uncoupled from our duty to resolve live controversies. Really? Was there a controversy that I'm unaware of in Citizens United?
Yeah, they made up that controversy. They expanded what the actual controversy was, which was, can we run this trailer without being subject to federal election finance law? And they went on to say, well, corporations can spend whatever they want on what? Where'd you get that?
And arguably, several cases he's ruled on, there was no case in
arguably
controversy.
the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
Because Shelby County, that was a facial challenge. And what a facial challenge means isn't, normally when a case comes up, what he's talking about, if we don't have a live controversy. A live controversy, for example, in the Voting Rights Act case, would be Shelby County says, we want to enact this voter law. They took it to the Department of Justice or the three-judge panel in D.C., said, we want to enact this. And they say, under the Voting Rights Act, because you are covered, we find that this is discriminatory and you may not enact it. And they say, we disagree, I appeal. And then when the next court rules, then they say, we appeal this to the Supreme Court to determine all of the parts of the Voting Rights Act. They didn't do that. All they said is, and they're correct when they say this, we are going to be subject to it, and we're probably going to have a voting law that we're going to want to change, and they're probably going to strike it down. So why don't we just talk about the entire constitutionality of the Voting Rights Act? Now, that's rare. And to overrule or to rule unconstitutional act of Congress based on a facial challenge, as Justice Ginsburg pointed out, is incredibly rare, and it requires an incredible amount of evidence to do, which, as Ginsburg pointed out, wasn't here.
Now,
Yet then the next day he says the exact same thing that argues against the opinion the day before.
Yeah, he said our assigned role, as Article 3 says, is to resolve disputes, cases, and controversies between two parties. He's essentially making the argument that the Supreme Court doesn't have the power to overrule Congress and to do the types of sweeping, harmful things that they have done in recent past.
He's arguing against judicial activism, which he's been a participant in so often.
Right. Well, according to Scalia and many conservatives, it's only judicial activism when they personally disagree with it.
Of course.
Right.
Judicial activism is a political phrase that's only used when you disagree. What
would you say, Shane, to people who argue that DOMA was essentially the less conservative justices doing the same thing?
Because there's a gigantic difference between these two cases. Because what he's saying is that we shouldn't get involved in DOMA. We should let the states do it. And we should get involved in the Voting Rights Act. And I think he's wrong on both counts. Because in the Constitution specifically under the 15th Amendment says Congress, not only do we want to stop voting discrimination, and it should end right now, Congress, you are charged specifically with enacting laws to make this amendment happen.
Right. So
Congress did that. And then the Supreme Court, in violation, I believe, of the Constitution itself, said, no, they did it wrong. We don't like it. It's gone. Then in DOMA, where Scalia is saying we shouldn't get involved at all, the Supreme Court was saying, federal government, there's nothing in the Constitution here that says you can define marriage. That's up to states. And we're going to let states do that, and we're going to follow their lead because they define it, and then we award, because we can't define it differently or at all. However you define it, states, we're going to assign federal rights based on that. So does that make sense?
As much as I can understand it, yes.
Essentially, the Constitution dictates what Congress can do.
Right. It does say
the Constitution
that they can...
says you can enact the Voting Rights Act. It says you can't define marriage. So they got involved where they should on DOMA, and they shouldn't have gotten involved on the Voting Rights Act. Scalia had it backwards.
Big surprise there. It's kind of his thing.
But like you said, it's just because he didn't like the outcome, so he came up with this.
Well, I think that we need to save this bench statement and hold on to it for the beginning of next term and for any term that Scalia is a part of, and remind him before he starts ruling on any more cases.
Yes,
that
for
in
example,
his own
NLRB,
words,
the NLRB is coming up. We have the next Citizens United coming up.
Right. That in his own words, he is only there to decide case and controversy, to settle disputes between two parties and not create judicial activism, not legislate from the bench, which he has been known to do.
Yeah, of course. They all have been.
Right. So, wow, we just keep running out of time. Yeah. There's just so much to talk about.
And, and to anybody who's listening and afterwards, like, how come they didn't get to that? Because we have 3 hours. That's
exactly.
It. We're sorry. We are sorry. And email us and tell us what we should have covered, and we will figure out a way.
Yes.
We'll do it at the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices. We will do it next episode. We will get to it.
Yes.
Swear.
Yes.
I swear.
I'd like to break down Obama's climate speech for one and his policy. We'll try and get to that next week. But we have more in store. So we're going to run back to a break, and we will be back with more. You're listening to Talking Left with me and Danielle and Shano, and we will be right back. Stick around.
So, who is responsible for these outrages?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Yo, word on the street is they got an NSA mixtape bike ride going down July 4th, 5 o'clock at WPWC Radio, 1918 Martin Luther King Avenue in Southeast Anacostia, Washington, D.C. But you ain't heard this from me, man. They got us on the run, man. Whistleblowers on the run. They already got my man Michael Hastings. They blew his car up. They got him. Eric Snowden's on the run. They got WikiLeaks stuck up in the Ecuador embassy. Can't go nowhere. I mean, man, Joe, you know what time it is, man. They got your emails. They got your phones. They got everything, man. So don't fax this. Don't send this out. Just word of mouth, man. Keep it on the low. But you ain't heard it from me, man. July 4th, 5 o'clock. At WPWC Radio, 1918, Martin Luther King Avenue, Southeast, Anacostia, Washington, D.C., man. Massive bike ride, man. We're going to blow the whistle on these motherfuckers. Man, you do something, man. But you ain't heard from me, man. Yo, I got to go, man. Do something.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Friends, David Schuster here, and all of us at WPWC Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the Ark's website, www.thearkdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The Ark, part of Southeast D.C.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hi, this is Tom Hartman.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster of Take Action News.
I'm Brad Friedman of BradBlog.com.
Hi, I'm cartoonist and agent provocateur P.S. Mueller.
This is Nicole Bell of crooksandliars.com, and this is...
You're listening to
and watching
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Great presidents aren't born, they are made. We've got to push people. They don't jump out in front of a parade if there's not a parade there. That is political suicide. The parade, metaphorically, already has to be in the streets with the picket signs saying, we need progressive talk in Portland, or we need marriage equality in Washington, or we need marijuana legalization in Colorado, you know, whatever.
Trans-Canada Pipeline.
Stop
the pipeline.
We have to push for our positions because they're not just going to out of thin air.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. There's been so much news, Shane, so much going on that you're going to have to pick. We only have time for one story here, so do we tell everybody about how Darrell Issa made up the entire IRS scandal and actually asked the Inspector General to look into Tea Party groups only? Or do we talk about Wendy Davis and the amazing action that just occurred in Texas?
Well, you know, I'm often a cynic and tend to go towards the complaining stuff, but Issa's a hustler. I don't think we should waste any time on him. Let's do Wendy Davis.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think everybody must have heard about this because it made such huge news. But let me give you a little backstory on what happened with Wendy Davis. Earlier in the week, before her amazing 11, 12-hour filibuster, more than 600 women's health advocates showed up to the Texas House at the state Capitol building because the Texas House was voting on abortion restrictions. Now, despite them conducting what they called a people's filibuster and lining up one after another to give public comment on the discussion, they spoke for 12 hours, one after another for a few moments at a time. And eventually, Texas lawmakers cut them off and ruled to approve these restrictive abortion bills anyway. They were furious. There were hundreds of people that were left that didn't even get a chance to speak. They had driven for hours to come and lend their voice to this fight. The people were furious. They shouted shame them to their faces, shame them for what they've done in the Capitol Rotunda. They were angry about this, and they let everybody know it. Well, just days later, after the Texas House decided that it was perfectly acceptable to vote for a bill that hundreds of people showed up, drove hours to explain was that bad, then the Texas Senate considered the legislation. And Miss Wendy Davis, state senator, now a national women's rights icon, stood in her pink sneakers for 11 plus hours, staging a single person's filibuster to block the Senate's vote on these same abortion measures.
With crazy rules for the filibuster.
Crazy rules.
Crazy.
She was not allowed to sit down. She was not allowed to stray off topic even the slightest.
Right.
She was not allowed to leave the floor at any time.
Not allowed to lean on the podium.
Nothing. She couldn't even, nothing.
Yeah.
And when you look at what they said she spoke off topic about, one was Planned Parenthood.
That's on topic.
And what was the other one? Forgive me, I
don't
blanked,
remember.
but it was another
they were ridiculous.
closely related discussion. So eventually, Dewhurst, the lieutenant governor, David Dewhurst, said she had violated those rules.
They were looking for technicalities to end it so they could vote.
Absolutely.
That's just all there is to it.
They managed to cite her for 3 of those violations at just minutes before the midnight deadline. And then the Senate tried to take a vote. Well, the crowd there was so angry and so inspired by what Wendy Davis had just done that they started chanting. They made so much noise that the Senate was unable to complete that vote until moments after the deadline, the midnight deadline. Now, in typical Republican fashion, they wanted to go back and rewrite history and say, we voted on time.
Yeah.
Everything was done. The law's in place. But
we not only have the power to tell you what you can do with your body, we have the power to move time.
Exactly. They even changed the website. Originally, because of when the vote took place, the website reflected Wednesday, which was after the midnight deadline. They went back. It said, no, it happened on Tuesday. It happened on Tuesday. Well, in a 3-hour meeting at about 3 a.m. Texas time, Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst had to come back out and say, well, about that law. We didn't actually complete it in time.
Texas time now has a new, I think, meaning.
Yeah, I want a Wendy Davis watch. That's what I want. They are already coming out with lots of Wendy Davis gear. She is getting all kinds of support from all around the country.
And on top of it, their new gerrymandering legislation would get rid of her district.
Yeah, I have a feeling she'll be back. I have a feeling that's kind of like an Alan Grayson situation. You could try and get rid of her, but she ain't giving up that easily.
No.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anyone else make these comparisons, and I don't know enough about her yet, but Ann Richards comes to mind.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know Ann, actually I got the pleasure of meeting Ann Richards and seeing her speak once. She was the governor of the state of Texas, Democrat, before George W. Fiery, just an amazing, amazing woman. In fact, her daughter is the president of Planned Parenthood. So I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn in saying this, but I have a lot of high hopes for her, whatever her aspirations are.
Yeah, I am incredibly impressed with Wendy Davis. She is an inspiration to us all. And her, along with the efforts of hundreds and thousands of Texas women's rights advocates, this bill, at least for now, is stopped. I think they're going to try and bring it up again, but I do not think she's going away that easily. So They have a fight on their hands. Wow, she was awesome. We're going to come back in just a few minutes with Nathan White. He is helping to arrange the rally to restore the Fourth right here in D.C. They're already expecting over 400 people, have senators speaking all kinds of amazing stuff to protect our Fourth Amendment. Don't go anywhere. Talking Left, me, Danielle, and Shano. We'll be right back.
I'm David Schuster of Take Action News, and you're listening to my favorite show other than my own, Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Mothers the world over have told their children a zillion times, stop playing with your food. I now share their frustration and would like to yell at the conglomerate packagers of America's victuals, stop playing with our food. Actually, they're playing with our heads, using dishonest packaging tactics to raise their prices without us noticing it. A 16-ounce carton of something, quietly slips to 14 ounces, but does not drop in price. Then there's the dimple trick. A jar of Hellmann's mayonnaise, for example, has had its contents shrunk, yet the new jar looks as big as the old one, unless you turn it on its end. There, you'll find a big indentation in the bottom, a hidden way to shrink the capacity of the jar and give you less for your money. David Siegel, who writes the Haggler column in the New York Times, recently reported on his adventures in Kraft Foods land. He talked to a PR lady there about the corporation's unpublicized but rather dramatic change in its Baker's brand of cooking chocolate. Instead of an 8-ounce package selling for $3.89, suddenly a box of Baker's contained only 4 ounces of chocolate, which sells for $2.89. Wow, that's nearly a 50% price hike per ounce. What gives? Siegel asked the Kraft spokeswoman. The change was consumer-driven, she craftily replied. Our consumers have told us that they prefer this smaller size. Sure, said Siegel, but what about that slippery price? She was as slippery as the price, declaring that the product is competitively priced. That was not the question, but her whole game is to avoid giving the honest answer. We're gouging our customers. This is Jim Hightower saying conglomerate food packagers not only feel free to dupe us consumers, but also they're considering such corporate chicanery to be a legitimate business practice.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, Check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
Here's today's headlines from Workers Independent News. I'm Jesse Russell. Workers in China held a U.S. businessman in captivity until he reached a compensation agreement for employees concerned that they may be displaced when some jobs are moved to India. Specialty Medical Supplies co-owner Chip Starnes was blocked from leaving when workers became concerned that they may not be fairly compensated if they're laid off. Starnes was allowed to leave after he reached an agreement with a union negotiator. Starnes has said the company wasn't planning to lay off many of the workers who fall under the agreed-to package, and told the Associated Press that he'd be rehiring some workers who had been previously let go. A new website is seeking to provide workers with the tools they need to create changes in their workplace. Coworker.org is a petition site that allows workers to build support as they endeavor to create a positive environment on the job. Jess Kutch is one of the co-founders of Coworker.org and provided an example of one way the site is being used successfully.
We have about 12 campaigns running on the site. We're really excited about a campaign that's running right now by Capital Bike Share employees. Capital Bike Share is DC's bike share program, and the employees there believe that they're owed more than $100,000 in back pay, as well as health and welfare benefits from the company. So they launched a petition. They've gotten a ton of local support, and they also got media coverage from outlets all over the country. And this week the company responded and said they're working to rectify the problem very quickly.
The site was inspired by the success Kutch saw with consumer petitions putting pressure on companies.
Workers need more support than a 17-year-old who's trying to ban plastic bags in her town. When you're going up against your boss, you're taking on a lot of risk, and there's a lot at stake. So Coworker.org is really committed to figuring out what kinds of support workers need to win these campaigns.
While the site is still in beta, the team behind Coworker.org are putting together resources that will help inform workers about their rights in the workplace and how to appropriately cope with an employer who may push back against the petition campaign. Macy's has agreed to pay $175,000 after a federal investigation determined the retail chain had discriminated against immigrant employees. The fine includes a $100,000 fund that will compensate the workers who had been unfairly terminated, suspended, or punished. Under the settlement, Macy's denied its practices were discriminatory or unfair. While details of the investigation weren't made available to the public, the Department of Justice said the company used unfair documentary practices.
You've been listening to WIN, the Workers' Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. So for several weeks, we've all been talking about the NSA and about the government surveillance programs and how huge of a violation this is to our Fourth Amendment. I think Shane and I even got into a little debate about how bad it was. And so joining us to talk about that and about what's being done about it is Nathan White. He's with the Rally to Restore the Fourth. You can check it out at Restore the Fourth on Twitter, Restore the Fourth hashtag, stopwatching.us. They are all over the place getting a huge support and huge outpouring of citizens concerned about their Fourth Amendment. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, we are really excited about it. Now, according to your press release, You are a grassroots, nonpartisan coalition of individuals coming together to organize rallies after, Edward Snowden revealed this massive government spying program. How did this whole movement get started, besides, the obvious of the information Snowden released?
That's correct. We're actually organized. We now have 81 rallies across the country, all the way from Hawaii to here in Washington, D.C. You can see where your closest rally is on restorethefourth.net. There's maps that will show you where all the different rallies are. But I think most people listening to this are going to be interested in the event at Washington, D.C., which is on July 4th in McPherson Square from 12 to 2. How this came together is that we live in the modern era and people communicate through the internet. People on the internet found out what was going on and they raised objections to it and they asked what that they could do about it. Collectively, mostly on IRC and on Reddit, well, now mostly on Reddit, people came together and said, well, what, we can do something about this. We can make our voices heard and we can say that this is not acceptable. And very much grassroots, a very collective of what are ideas, how can we do this? The idea of Restore the Fourth, which the concept of Restore the Fourth actually existed before the Edward Snowden links, but was a wave of people brought into it with the Edward Snowden links. And collectively, people decided we're going to go out and we're going to say, hey, this is not acceptable, and we're going to have rallies. We built websites. We've got people all over the country writing press releases, calling media, inviting speakers, making sure that we have first aid and we have tents, and we're looking to have a pretty good rally. We're, as I said, 81 rallies across the country, and it's entirely grassroots without any kind of central leadership telling everyone what they should do. This is the people coming together to speak and say no.
Well, I think the effort you have put into this, and I'm sure lots of others working with you, is really amazing. Just to remind everybody, we're speaking with Nathan White of Restore the Fourth. You can check it out at restorethefourth.net. All those links will be up with the blog post after the show. This is a big rally on the 4th of July, right in McPherson Square in D.C., and you have senators have recorded videos and sent that to you. You have great speakers coming out, and you guys have also been endorsed by some organizations that I think are really amazing and reputable and do great work, like Demand Progress and EPIC, Electronic Privacy Information Center, that has been one of the pivotal organizations fighting this problem for quite some time, even trying to bring it to court, correct?
That's correct. We've actually got a pretty diverse group of people who are endorsing us and supporting us, and this is nonpartisan. This isn't any particular party. We're going across the board. We've been officially endorsed by, as you mentioned, Demand Progress, Bill of Rights Defense Center, the Washington Peace Center, the Montgomery County Civil Rights Commission, Defending Dissent. We're working with several other organizations who are in the process of becoming sponsors and endorsers. We're also being helped by Stop Watching Us Coalition, which is a coalition of, I believe it's 86, it might be 87 organizations that are nonprofit organizations, advocacy organizations, and internet companies, including Mozilla. They have 500,000 grassroots members, and they're helping us get the word out as well.
Yeah,
you mentioned speakers. We've got actually a fantastic rundown of speakers. We do have at least one senator who's confirmed sending a video. It's Prime Parade Day for members of Congress and for senators, but we do have confirmed already at least one, and we expect to have more. Hopefully we'll have an announcement on that by Monday or Tuesday once we get some more confirmations. We also expect to have a video from Governor Gary Johnson. Carla Howell, the president of the Libertarian Party, is a confirmed speaker. We have Chris Bookover, also of the Libertarian Party. Thomas Drake, who's a former senior executive with the NSA and a whistleblower, is coming. We have the executive director of the Bill of Rights Defense Committee. We have an activist with Demand Progress, executive director of Defending Dissent, and one of our latest speakers that we've just added is Craig Aaron, who is the CEO of Free Press, which is a wonderful organization that I would encourage people to take a look at.
Well, and I think the coalition of organizations supporting this effort and the coalition of speakers and people contributing to this event show how this issue has bridged the divide between political parties among political parties, I guess is better stated, because this is an issue that affects all of us, and all of us are upset about it. It doesn't matter whether you consider yourself a Democrat, progressive, liberal, libertarian, Republican. I don't think anybody wants to be spied on by their government, and this outpouring of support shows that.
No matter what your politics are, no matter where you fall on this kind of concept of a left-right divide, the one thing that brings us all together and founds the basis for our society is the United States Constitution. And the Fourth Amendment of the Bill of Rights is what's under threat here. It is what brings us all together that's under threat. It is not a left-right divide. It is all of us. And there are these arguments that people will put forth to say that, it's legal, don't worry about it. It's interesting when they say that. When they make a ruling, it's a legal opinion. They say it's our opinion that this is legal because Congress passed some resolutions and we think it's okay. That doesn't actually make it law.
Right.
If it's unconstitutional, we've got several high or well-respected constitutional scholars across the country who have said that argument does not matter because it's unconstitutional. The Fourth Amendment is very clear on this.
Right, and it's been very difficult to challenge this because of the secrecy. You know, your way to say something is unconstitutional is to bring it up through the courts. Well, those organizations and individuals who have tried, like Epic, for instance, have been met with resistance because they couldn't prove they were being spied on. With Edward Snowden's leaking of this information and him blowing the whistle on all of it, they now have information that they were, in fact, being spied on, and hopefully you can bring this to a constitutional challenge. But I think this is the other side, what you are doing. This is the movement, the individuals who maybe don't have the time, the money, or the proof to bring this to court, but say, I don't care. I want it stopped anyway. Not now, not in my name. Is that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, I think that's a good summation. And I also think that it's unfair to ask an average American to be able to look at different pieces of legislation and know what the effects are going to be. The obligations of citizens are to participate and become informed. They elect representatives who then take action on their behalf. Our movement has established three things that we'd like to see. We'd like to see all of this declassified so we can have an open discussion over what is actually happening. We want an investigation so we can find out how these programs got started, who authorized them, and under what quote-unquote legitimacy. And third, we want to hold people accountable if laws were broken. We're not going to say that laws were broken because we don't want to put the cart before the horse, but we want that investigation and we want people to be held accountable. Beyond that, we have not come around any kind of legislative fix because that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to tell the government that this is not okay, and it's the government representatives who are the legal experts and the legislative experts to reflect the will of the people. If they don't reflect the will of the people, then we got to kick them out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what is it, just to remind everybody, this is the Rally to Restore the Fourth. It's July 4th in McPherson Square. And if you're listening from somewhere else in the country, you can find out where a rally is near you at restorethefourth.net. What do you want people coming to the rally to do? Are you asking them to bring signs or maybe help get more people involved? What can they do to increase the impact of Restore the Fourth?
Well, the most important thing that people can do to increase the impact is to show up, to be there, to make your voice heard. I think it's the most patriotic thing that you could possibly do on July 4th is to celebrate the Constitution by demanding that we follow it. The second thing, bring a friend. Having a large crowd that will show that there are a large number of people who will show up on a vacation day, who will put down the hot dogs and the hamburgers for just a couple hours to come out and say, no, this isn't okay. So please come. We'd love to have you there in whatever fashion that you feel comfortable, and we'd love for you to bring your friends and to let them know that this is an issue that concerns you.
Well, Nathan, I really respect everything you're doing. I think it is so important, and there's nothing more American than standing up for your Constitution. Thank you so much for joining us and for all the work you're doing for Restore the Fourth. We will keep plugging it and put the links up with the blog post for this show. Thank you. Thank you for taking time with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Nathan White, Rally to Restore the Fourth. Again, that is July 4th in McPherson Square from noon to 2 p.m. All those links will be up with the blog post for this show. You can check it out at restorethefourth.net. You can use the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag RestoreTheFourth. And if there's not an event near you, maybe you can start one, even if it's just a few people. Solidarity. This is, after all, our Constitution. It's kind of important.
I think we know what we're doing on the 4th now.
Right. Well, we still have even more to talk about. I knew we'd never get to everything, but we're still going to try. Got a couple segments left. So, one segment left. Wow, this show flew by. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be back with more. So stick around.
What is this? What's going on?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
We got no plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Follow like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited about the gay marriage decision. I'm excited that we've decided there can't be a federal law banning love for a large number of Americans. And as I've said before, gay marriage is not harming anyone. What's harming people is straight couples getting married and having like 72 kids. If you want to get married, but if you want to have a kid over like 2 or 3, I think it should be voted on by everyone else on a case-by-case basis. So if you want to fire 14 kids into this world out of your semi-automatic assault vagina, they better be top of the line. If you want to shoot dozens of fleshy half-wits, hordes of hairless dip into the faces of innocent civilians, I think the rest of us should have a say. So I'm excited for the added equality our country now has, but we also must not allow this to be a distraction from the fact that our system continues to be gutted and befouled, muted and cowed. The Supreme Court tore up the Voting Rights Act the other day, so apparently we're back in 1965. Can't wait for them to put the separate water fountains back in. In fact, I'm just excited to see a water fountain again, as opposed to $3 bottled water shipped in from Canada and pissed in by Coca-Cola. Also, the NSA spying scandal has shown us that we no longer have our freedom from unreasonable, unwarranted search and seizure. In fact, that right was so important, I think it's in the Constitution. Let me check. Yeah, it is. Do you think they use like a whiteout to cover that up, or is it like a erasable pen situation, or maybe one of those Mad Magazine fold-over dealies? They just fold over the Fourth Amendment, cover it up that way. And finally, they're going after freedom of speech and expression. Jeff Olson is a man in San Diego who now faces a 13-year jail sentence for drawing anti-Bank of America messages on the sidewalk in chalk. As in the that cannot be removed from a sidewalk ever, unless there's a light drizzle. And it gets even better. The judge has forbid Olson and his lawyer from even mentioning freedom of speech or freedom of expression in the courtroom. Not only has our freedom of speech been taken away, but it's so scary to the rich and powerful, just the mention of it could wreak havoc on our society. You can't just be speaking anything you want left and right. What's next? Man gonna marry a goat? We've gone from the Constitution being the thing that was supposed to guide our courts to it being the thing you can't even mention in the courts. By the way, Bank of America is about as evil as they come. Jeff Olson's chalk messages were the equivalent of throwing marshmallows at a 300-foot dragon with Tourette's, because fire-breathing Tourette's would be like the worst kind of Tourette's. You know, the dragon walks up to his friends like, "Hey guys, how you the boom, whole village on fire." Bank of America is currently facing a class action lawsuit from former employees across the country who said they were pressured and bribed to tell homeowners they would help them stay in their homes, and meanwhile doing everything they could to get them foreclosed on. Bank of America took money from government agencies designed to help people keep their homes, pocketed it, and then still kicked the homeowners out. Putting the bank execs in jail, they should be tarred and feathered. I mean, if there's any place that deserves some chalk messages calling them greed-infected viruses completely morally vague, it's Bank of America. And Jeff Olson could go to jail for that, while Bank of America continues to walk free. Let's defend this man and those like him. Let's defend freedom of speech. That's been your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. The music here at the end is by George Martinez and the Global Block Collective. I'll have the link to that album in the description, as well as the links to all the info I mentioned, including Jeff Olson's story. Also, I'm performing live in Asheville, North Carolina, Portland, Maine, and Montreal in the coming days. Go to leecamp.net for the details. Keep fighting.
Look into my hands, workers in the plans, freedom for my people to take back the land. We growing food on rooftops to make sure the hunger stops. But if we liberate the soil, we running the cops. The blue walls of silence, shutting dissent with violence. Too many kids are falling asleep to the sound of sirens while their parents are learning to believe in.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shana.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shana. We were just speaking with Nathan White of Restore the Fourth. You can check it out at restorethefourth.net. It's a great rally getting together to protect our Fourth Amendment. So we wanted to mention that our very own We Act Radio, where we love and we are so happy to be on the airwaves, is also holding an event to protest and to speak out against government surveillance. It's called the NSA Mixtape Bike Ride. I always love how We Act puts together like the coolest events. It's not just like, oh, everybody get together and
Bring
do
a sign.
X.
Yeah.
It's always like get involved, do something, which is, their tagline, do something. Such a simple concept. This bike ride is scheduled to kick off at 5 p.m. on July 4th. It's starting at We Act Radio headquarters, which is 1918 Martin Luther King Ave, Southeast. And it's being called a flash mob, part street theater, and part march in opposition to Big Brother. This is just really amazing. Kimon Freeman, one of the co-owners of We Act Radio, has been influential with putting this together. And he has put together his mixtape, which is songs all, put together to represent the fact that we're being spied on and that we need to speak out against it.
You and I thought of a couple songs, but they may not be there. We haven't had a chance to listen to the entire thing yet.
Right.
You're going to put the link up at the blog post.
Of course I am.
Yeah. I thought so. Actually, you can embed it. It's a YouTube.
There's also a Facebook page. You can check it out. We'll put that link up right at talkingleft.com. I'm sure you can get to it through weactradio.com as well. And you can just search it, NSA Mixtape Bike Ride. I imagine you probably would be able to find it, but
there's like at least probably 75 groups out there by that name, though. I'm joking.
The government's going to start adding their own just to confuse people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hearing groups.
Just... I really appreciate We Act Radio, and we don't often take time to say this. We appreciate SoFlo Radio. We love our family. We love Nicole Sandler and RadioOrNot.com. We Act Radio has also been really amazing to us, and they are really amazing and influential to the community.
They don't just say do something; they do something.
Absolutely, every day, and they are not just talking about it; they are always doing it. And this is just another example. Again, it's the NSA Mixtape Bike Ride. It's 5 p.m. on the 4th of July. So you could go to Nathan's event from 12 to 2, hang out at the Restore the Fourth rally at McPherson Square, and then maybe grab some lunch and head on over to We Act Radio. Again, the address is 1918 Martin Luther King Ave. And then ride your bike, listen to some awesome music that Kimon put together, and stand up for your Fourth Amendment. I mean, that's a day. That is a day of true American patriotism, if you ask me.
Yeah, and Restore the Fourth on the 4th. I love it.
That means two things.
I just love it.
You've had that drop all day waiting to play it.
I had to actually steer the conversation into using it, but I did.
Yeah, so, there's so much going on. I know we didn't get to everything. There's Obama's climate speech. We would have loved to speak more about Wendy Davis and her amazing work.
And Daryl Issa.
The
hustler, the grand hustler.
Yeah. I almost wish we could play that song, too.
Yeah.
But we tried our best. And these civil rights cases and just what We Act Radio and Nathan are doing, standing up for our rights, I don't think there's anything more important than that.
Yeah, and there's no better way to spend the 4th.
There really isn't. Lots of good stuff going on. So 4th of July, hit Nathan's event, hit WeAct's event, and then you can go and relax when your work is done. I just want to thank all of our amazing guests, Dana Veriano-Camisi, David Schoen of the ACLU of Alabama, Zach Ford. Remember to check out his play. We'll put the link up as well. And Nathan White and everybody at WeAct Radio, Kimon, Alex, Pete, everybody over there. George Rodriguez of SoFlo Radio, Rocky Mountain Mike for our amazing theme music. Of course, Tom, Louise, Sean, and Jim, and they certainly know what what we're thanking them for. And just to all of our great guests, all of everybody today. And thank you. You're the reason we do what we do. So we'll be back next week. Stick around and stay tuned for Mark Levine. He'll be up next on WeAct Radio.